Your house is worth whatever it's worth, right? Whoever sells it. Wrong. I'm Charlie. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie, and thank you for coming.
Charlie Landing grew up in Sussex, is the founder of Best Agent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same.
So Charlie, what would be your advice for people interested in buying new builds right now?
Don't overpay. Do buy, but don't overpay. That's why I say disregard the guff. Read into the numbers and look, and it's buried. The bad news is buried in the small print, okay?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
They may or may not be telling the truth, but you should form your own view. Get out and view, get out and view, get out and view. You cannot be in a position to make offers and have the offers accepted if you're not viewing. Just be out there viewing. Pay attention to the back of the class. If you've not been watching my videos, I did one just a couple of days ago. Disregard the guff. Happy New Year, everybody. I shouldn't be doing this video, I'm not feeling very well, but you remember this from last year? This is going to be the theme of a lot of my campaigning this year because, especially with all the research I've done, you're going to find out why that is true, right? But this video is not going to be talking about this. This video, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be working. I'm supposed to be resting. I'm not well. But I couldn't leave it alone after some of the just the most infuriating content I've seen on social media from mortgage brokers and the like, thinking that house prices going up is a good thing. When actually house prices going up faster than wages go up is pretty much the root cause of most of this country's problems now, including, but not limited to, crime levels, productivity, child poverty, welfare costs, debt, talent attraction and retention, homelessness, and even suicide. All of those topics have got a direct link with housing costs, the cost of housing, the cost of living. And yet there is we as a society are just addicted to thinking, because it's free money, isn't it? If you buy a house and without doing anything, the value of that house doubles and triples and quadruples and quintuples and sextuples. Well, I mean, that's lovely. It's just really, really nice. And some people even convince themselves that it's down to their own sheer brilliance that they've made so much money from their house. And look how rich and successful they are when they've actually done nothing. But actually, the harder it becomes for new generations to afford a place to live, the more demotivating it is for them, the more demoralizing it is for them, the more they don't want to bother going to work, because what's the point of going to work if you can't afford to pay a house, pay for a home, even when you've got a job? And look where we are. And then homelessness now at record levels, with the number one cause of homelessness being people being evicted from their homes. And yet there are still some utter cloth-eared numpties cheering house price inflation like it's not a bad thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a capitalist, right? I am someone who believes in people who bring value to society, to the local community, do something well and help improve people's lives. Those people should get rich, right? Whether it's because you're a musician whose music makes people happy and so millions of people buy it that makes you rich, or whether it's because you invent something that improves people's lives and everyone buys it so it makes you rich, or whether it's because you start up a business and you employ people and everyone loves what your business does and so it's really popular and therefore you get rich. I'm all for that. I'm all for people getting rich on the back of the property market if they're doing it by helping people. So, for example, I've got no problems with landlords getting rich if their tenants are happy. A happy tenant means they're happy that they can afford their home and it's a good quality home and they feel secure there. Happy tenant equals good landlord. And good landlords, as far as I'm concerned, deserve to make money. Bad landlords do not. And we have a problem where the government and the idiot charities campaigning for it are just going, right, batter them all. All landlords are bad, rather than going, hang on a second, let's not punish the good ones. But that ship's already sailed, and the idiots behind that campaigning are now starting to see the fruits of their labors with record homelessness. So I'm not against people making money out of property. If you're someone who's very, very good at buying a fixer-upper and fixing it up and doing such a great job that you add value to the property and you sell it at market value and you make a living doing that, and you're very good at it, good luck to you. You deserve to make money. You're creating, you're adding value, you're providing a service, and that's a good reason to get rich. But if you are speculating, for purely speculating, gambling for profit at the expense of people's cost of living and quality of life, in my view, that makes what you do a bad thing. So cheering for rapidly growing house prices is like cheering for the increase of suffering for the growing people suffering from poverty and child poverty. I mean, literally, there is so much cold hard evidence from government data that rising costs of living and the cost of shelter, cost of accommodation directly contributes to some of the worst problems we have in society. And you then cheer house prices growing? I'm sorry, it makes you either stupid or cruel, you know? And Martin Lewis's survey he did today, I thought was interesting. Let's just get it up on the screen. Martin Lewis. Now, I've got two issues with this, or 2 points to make about this. So Martin Lewis, the money supermarket guy, not money supermarket, what's he called? Sorry, guys, I'm not like money saving expert. That's right. Put a survey up on his X account today, and there are 2 things to note here. First of all, I was kind of pleasantly surprised that about 65% of people think that house prices rising is a bad thing. Was it for 50? No, sorry, 59%. So more than half of people, homeowners and non-homeowners alike, think that rising house prices is mainly a bad thing. That gives me some hope for the future. But there are 38% and so there are 40% of people who think that rising house prices is a good thing. Now, of course you think it's a good thing if you think that your house is going to be your pension or your investment, or is going to pay for your kid to get a house. Of course you think it's a good thing for you, but at an individual level, yes, it is a good thing for you. But when house prices rise, fewer people can afford them. Now, the other point I want to make here, because this leads on to the main reason for this video, which is the sheer rank stupidity of thinking that rapidly rising house prices is a good thing for the country, right? Martin Lewis quotes the Halifax and goes, today's poll, UK house prices up 3.3% year on year. Source Halifax. Stated as if it's fact. Okay, he's quoted his source. He hasn't said he agrees or disagrees, believes or disbelieves. But because people trust Martin Lewis on money, for good reason, right? All the people looking at this are going to go, oh, house prices are up. House prices are up. Martin Lewis said so. He quoted the Halifax. Must be true. And so one of my missions this year is to bludgeon, metaphorically speaking, my way into Martin Lewis's audience, hopefully with his help, to say, if you care about your audience's finances and you care about people's cost of living, you need to, at the very least, raise people's awareness about how misleading this concept is, okay? Because let's just talk about what the definition, when we see the phrase in a sentence like that, in a headline, from someone with a large platform or on a newspaper or on TV or on social media, quoted by a well-known organization with a big platform, what do people think is meant by the phrase house prices? I mean, so I haven't said hello to you in the live chat this evening yet. Can you just answer my question right now in the live chat? Define house prices. Tell me what you think is the definition of house prices when quoted by people like Martin Lewis and the media and Halifax and all these institutions who put out press releases with the phrase house prices in the title. What are house prices? Because what you'll start to find out is that there's no such thing collectively as house prices. Are we talking about transaction prices or are we talking about house values? Are we talking about asking prices or are we talking about completed prices? Are we talking about the value of houses, whether they're selling or not, or only the ones that sell? Are we talking, and when we see the headline, house prices went up, does that mean all house prices went up? Because that's what it sounds like, isn't it? Everywhere? Now, those of you who've been watching my channel for long enough will know that when we see these figures from the Halifax or Nationwide or anywhere else, it's the average across 4 different countries. And even in the last year, Northern Ireland and Scotland were going up while England and Wales were going down, but nobody mentioned that. So tell me, what was happening to house prices? What's the truthful, factually accurate description of what happens to house prices in the UK when the national trends in the 4 nations of the United Kingdom are all doing different things? What does that mean UK house prices are doing? There is no, this is the point, right? But the phrase house prices is used to gaslight people. Now, whether it's Halifax or Nationwide or Rightmove or Zoopla or the Land Registry or the ONS, it doesn't matter. It's used, whether it's mortgage brokers or estate agents, it's used for gaslighting people. And yes, house prices go up and house prices go down and house prices don't move. Individual house values change. I'm not making a comment on what's happening in the market now. What I'm saying is there is almost zero correlation between what's happening to an individual property's price, the house you are buying or selling, or the flat you are buying or selling. Almost no correlation between the price of that property and UK national average house prices. Right? But it's the only thing that gets talked about again and again and again and again. And I see so many people now looking very confused. I've just had to lower my asking price like by 10 or 15%. But I keep reading in the news that house prices are going up. It's very frustrating. I will come to your questions afterwards. This is not going to be a long one. I will come to your questions afterwards. By the way, something new this evening. We are, for the first time ever, simultaneously, I believe, live streaming on TikTok at the same time as YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and X. So hello if you're watching on TikTok. Oh, Hector, thank you so much. Hector on YouTube says, the term house prices is clearly inaccurate and meaningless. Yes, it is. And what I want everyone to think when they see the phrase house prices in the media, unless that is clearly defined what they're talking about, I want people to think it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It should not be a factor in my buying or selling decision. It's the single most powerful and most frequently used phenomenon in estate agency, in the media, to get people to be in fear of missing out, of buying a house and being left behind, right? And nowhere do you read, except for one article in the Financial Times recently, where they showed that actual London house values are down 16% in real terms in the last 10 years, adjusted for inflation, right? And house prices, Jose, I know that long-term followers of this channel think it, but the trouble is that, look, I've got 329 people watching this video right now. I need 1,000 times more people than that to be watching the video. I am not moving the needle on awareness. I am not making a dent in this colossal gaslighting effort of the banks and media and mortgage brokers and agents. And the silly thing of it is that mortgage brokers and agents would both make more money if house prices didn't go up, because more people would be able to afford them. This is not up for discussion or debate. There's no question about this. It's plainly obvious that if more people could afford a home, more people would buy them and more people would move. And there'd be more transactions and agents and brokers would make more money. I'm not against borrowing money to buy a house. It makes sense, right? It makes sense to secure a home by getting a mortgage and paying off the mortgage and owning your home. And people think that I'm trying to push back against that and go, oh no, it's not a good thing to buy. I'm not pushing back. It is a good thing to buy and own your home outright, regardless of its value. That's the point. Regardless of its financial value. And it is no longer a safe assumption to think that buying a home is a good investment. It might be cheaper than renting, because wherever you live, there's a cost, right? You got stuff to pay. And I'm not saying that buying can't be cheaper than renting. It can be. In many cases, it is. It depends whether you're getting a studio flat or a big house, whatever. It's different in all cases. But the way in which the money lending industry and the estate agency industry and the government, because they need house values to remain high to prop up GDP figures, the way they go about continuing to propagate this myth that house values are rising when they aren't, okay? They aren't. And even using the government's own data, go back and watch my video from before Christmas, even using the ONS data and the government's inflation data, the ONS's incorrectly overestimated house price growth is still not as high as CPIH inflation. So even with their best efforts, house values are shrinking, not rising, as a national average. But that doesn't mean they're all doing the same. They're all doing different things. They're all doing different things. The smell of one house versus another will change the value at what price that house will sell. People say, okay, so Sahar K says, to be honest, I'm not seeing a decrease in house prices. Sahar, welcome to the channel. This comment frustrates me because where are you getting your data on house prices? Are you looking at the top of the market or the bottom? Are you a first-time buyer? Are you a landlord? Are you an investor? What data are you using? Is it because you're looking at Halifax and Nationwide? If it's in your local market, what are you saying? Is it asking prices you're not seeing a decrease in? Do you have access to actual exchange prices locally? No, you won't. So the point is, what you're seeing isn't what's happening. And that is how the government and the industry get away with gaslighting everybody into overpaying. Don't even get me started on new builds. Don't even get me started on new builds. Only childless people living in large houses wouldn't want housing affordability to improve. Okay? Because if you have children or grandchildren, rising house prices is making them worse off, right? I am worse off than my parents' generation. I'm a Gen X, my parents are boomers. Millennials are worse off than me. Gen Z are worse off than millennials. It's getting worse and worse and worse with each generation. Now, what parent or grandparent is going to go, yeah, but then that's just brilliant. That's just great. I mean, house prices, yay, raising house prices. Never mind my kids can't afford a house to live in. This is just good, right? It's just good. Anyway, besides all of that, I can't... Saha, give me, say West London, thank you. But give me more detail. Like, tell me exactly why. Tell me, please, could you put a nice long comment? I'll read it out. I want to know what is formulating that point of view that you're not seeing a decrease in house prices. Yeah, Martin Turner, social mobility is dead. This is the point. This is why they need to get rid of stamp duty. Like, at least the transactions up to £500,000, at least, and preferably a lot more. But if they would just raise the stamp duty threshold to £500,000, the social mobility for most of the country would be unlocked. Moving house would be easier. The market can do what the market wants to do in terms of prices. So if I could wave my magic wand, I would wave it and I would cast the following spell. Never again would an estate agent or a mortgage broker go, house prices are going to go up. They would never say they, or down. They wouldn't say they're going to go up, or they wouldn't say they're going to go down. What they would say is, the value of your home will do whatever the market's going to do. Our job is to get you moved. Our job is to finance your move. Right? I'm an estate agent. I'm not an estate agent, but what I wish agents would say, I've never been an estate agent, right? But I've had them as my clients for 25 years, so I know them really well. I wish all estate agents would just say, it doesn't really matter what house prices are doing. My job is to get you moved, whatever's happening. And the only reason that there is still this blind, like zombie, lemming-like belief that you must talk house prices up in the housing industry is because it used to be a good investment, and bringing investors in brought more buyers in, made more competition, and did push prices up. But it's now like self-harm for agents and mortgage brokers who say this, because it's killing transaction volumes. And yes, 2025 will see marginally better transaction volumes in 2024, hopefully. I hope, because the only thing that is good for absolutely everybody, without exception, is more people moving house. If more people move house, liquidity in the market improves. It becomes easier to sell or buy. There's more choice for buyers and sellers. It becomes quicker to buy and sell, and social mobility improves. That's why it would be really good if we could have more transactions. And intelligent agents and intelligent brokers are going, yeah, you're right. If house prices were lower, more people would buy. Because there are people in rented now who want to own a home but can't afford it. And not only that, if prices came down and more people bought and moved out of rented, it would actually free up rental stock, and that would come down as well. So this is the point, right? So Stephen Loosely, hello, new name, welcome, correctly points out that a house is a home. Don't get caught up in it being a way of making a fast or a slow big buck. This is correct. But there is this, and this isn't just an opinion. I have had people contacting me in one-to-one video calls and saying, I bought a few years ago and I now can't sell and I'm trapped. I'm in negative equity. I owe more than the house is worth and I can't sell it. And I feel stupid. And I say to them, don't feel stupid. Didn't everybody tell you that it was a good idea? And then, yeah, everyone did. So when you are a Gen Xer or a millennial and everyone in your family is telling you, listen, you can't go wrong with bricks and mortar. Look how well we did. And you look in the media and you see Martin Lewis going, Halifax's house prices have gone up 3%. They must be true. And you see the governments, the ONS, falsely claiming that year-on-year house price growth, and I will back this comment up and go back and watch the video I've done about it, right? Falsely claiming that house prices have gone up by quoting unrevised figures of a small sample size with a year ago revised down figures of a large sample size, and making the comparison between those two data sets and saying, oh, house prices have gone up. When if you look at the actual numbers from those two dates, the most recent figures we have are for September, I think. Anyway, there is this unspoken assumption that you can't go wrong and that buying a home makes sense. And for many people, buying a home does make sense. But let me get to the point with this. These are the cohorts of people I think who should be buying a house now. And I will go on to the ones who I don't think should be. If you want a home for at least the next 10 years, and you can find one that you can afford without overpaying, everyone who meets those criteria should definitely 100% buy a home. Caveat about leasehold homes, that's a separate point. I'm just talking about freehold homes now, right? Everyone who wants to buy a home for at least 10 years, one that they're not planning to move out of for at least the next 10 years, who's found one that they can afford without overpaying and doesn't overpay for it, should definitely buy. At 10 years or more, and pay off the mortgage and own your home. Absolutely. Take a mortgage out to do that. These are all good things to do. And people mistake me as saying, oh no, you shouldn't buy. I'm not saying that. But don't think that it's going to make you rich or better off or well off, or it's going to provide you with a pension or an inheritance for your kids. That's the mistake that people are making. If you're looking to buy, but you think you want to move within 5 years, it would depend very much on exactly what kind of property you're buying and where you're buying and what the market was like in your particular area. And again, sticking to freehold only. But I would be, if I was buying with a mortgage intending to move within the next 5 years, I would be buying extremely carefully in the current climate, given the economy, given what's happening in the economy and what's likely to happen in the next couple of years. I would be very careful about buying, and I would be highly considering the risk that 5 years from now, just a chance, but a big enough chance that you need to consider it, it might be worth less than you paid for it 5 years from now. And there are people who bought in London in 2019 who are now finding that out. They cannot sell. Never mind 2020, 21, 22. Even 2019, there are people who bought back then who can't sell now. So anyone who tells you, no, that'll never happen, is lying to you or just wrong and they don't understand. Okay? Less than 5 years, I'll be really clear, right? I'm not saying don't buy if you're going to move in less than 5 years. What I'm saying is, especially if you're buying with a mortgage, the risks of finding it impossible to sell in 5 years' time, or maybe being a negative equity, or just having to sell for a reduced value, the risks, in my opinion, are higher than usual, and I would be buying with extreme caution, and I would be considering the worst case scenario. Okay, let me give you an example. If it was me, I was like, I found a house, I want to buy it, I want to move in 5 years, I've got a 90% mortgage. What's the worst case scenario? Let's just say that I decide that the worst case scenario for that property in that location is that worst case scenario, it might lose 10%. But also 5 years from now, I've probably paid off a bit of my mortgage. And so the worst case scenario is that in 5 years' time, I'm going to be selling, and after my cost of selling the stuff, I'm probably going to be at zero. I will have lost my 10% deposit. I'll be able to sell, pay off the mortgage. And then I would say to myself, is that a risk I'm willing to accept? Like, could I roll with that? Would that be okay? Would I survive? Would I move on anyway? And if the answer is yes, I go, okay, I've considered the worst case scenario. I'm willing to accept it should it happen. I would proceed with that purchase, but I would be buying as carefully as I could. I would not get in a bidding war. I'd be looking to buy a property that no one else is bidding on. I'd be hunting for the bargains, and I would be only getting a bargain. Hector says, I'm a commercial agent and completely agree with the sentiment on values. We are in a slow decline, so people should do lots of research and think about liquidity issues going forward. Spot on. Mike Layson on X says, how does your thinking change with, say, a 60% mortgage? The thinking doesn't change at all. All that changes is the worst case scenario situation, right? Obviously, with a lower loan to value mortgage, your exposure and your risk is smaller. If you've got a 90% mortgage and your property value comes down 10% when you want to sell in 5 years, you've lost all your deposit. If you've got a 60% mortgage and your property comes down only 10%, then you're still going to have 3/4 of your deposit that you started out with. You'll be losing 1/4 of your deposit if, with a 60% mortgage, you bought somewhere and it came down 10% in 5 years. Okay, so I want to deal much, much more in giving people the information with which to make their own decision on buying or selling or moving without making predictions, just using historical data. So there's no question about it, and I haven't got to put up with the absolute numpties that can't cope with any form of expectation without just having a meltdown. And so, for example, I'm going to be continually, you will hear me a lot, continually referring back to the ONS's clearly misstated house price index figures, because they are not comparing. When they announced September 2024's average house price, they didn't make it clear, and that when they announced the year-on-year price growth, they did not say that was their unrevised estimate today being compared with their revised down completed figure from a year ago. They didn't make that point. And if they had made that point, it would have changed the, I think it was from memory, 3.4% yearly growth figure that they wrongly claimed, and it would have taken it down to 1.3% yearly growth. Leaving to one side that that's the national average of the whole of the UK and therefore totally fucking meaningless for everyone anyway. The point is that because that national figure is of no value individually, it is only used to gaslight people into thinking, but the ONS said that house prices are going up, so I'm going to go and take out a mortgage and overpay for a house like a dum-dum. I don't mean, it's not fair to call people dum-dums when they do that, because this is hard stuff to figure out when you've done everything you're supposed to do. You've done everything you were told to do. You've gone to school. You've kept your head down. Got your exams. Gone to university. Got a job. You've saved for God knows how many years, or given a deposit, whatever. And you're looking around, and it's just this bewildering amount of information, and all of it's telling you everything's fine. You can't go wrong. Borrow up, and then you've got the worst kind of idiot mortgage brokers who just can't get off their high house price horse. I find that so wholly irresponsible of a mortgage broker. The only responsible thing a mortgage broker can say is, I cannot offer you an opinion on what either house prices or interest rates are going to do. All I can do is advise you on the range of products on offer, the different terms, the different features of the products, and which ones match your plans the best. That's all I can do. That is the only thing that a mortgage broker with real integrity can say, right? Because any mortgage broker saying, oh, look, so-and-so is saying all these house prices are going to go up, is complicit in the gaslighting that's causing people to overpay. And by overpaying, putting themselves in danger of losing their home and negative equity. I'm sorry, you cannot argue or disagree with what I've just said. It is a straightforward fact. Naive home buyers make a dangerous assumption that people working in the property market know what's happening with house prices and with interest rates. If you think about it, asking anyone what's going to happen to interest rates is one of the most galactically stupid questions anyone could ask. Because not even the Bank of England governor knows what's going to happen with interest rates. Never ask a mortgage broker what they think is going to happen to interest rates. I mean, try to picture it. Let's imagine it's 2021, right? It's 2021. Interest rates and mortgage rates are at their lowest level in history. And there were mortgage brokers selling people a 2-year fix. Think about how stupid that is, right? The only reason for taking a 2-year fix, unless of course you're planning to move within 2 years, that's a different thing. But let's assume that you're buying a home to move in and stay there for the foreseeable future. The only reason you would ever take a 2-year fix is because you have a very high degree of confidence that in 2 years' time, mortgage rates will be lower than when you took out your 2-year fix. Now apply that logic to someone taking out a 2-year fix in 2021 when mortgage rates were at record lows. If you didn't take out the longest fix that was available to you in 2021, you need your head examined. And if you have a broker who encouraged you to take out a 2-year fix in 2021 or 2022 before mortgage rates took off, you should have a word with them. Madalena Calleja, forgive me if I got that pronunciation wrong, says buying a property for 5 years, it would be a waste of time and money. No one should do that. I think right now I would generally concur with that sentiment, but back in the day it wasn't the case. And there are a lot of people of my generation and older. I'm 52. I'm a Gen Xer. So of my generation and older who are unable to see that the landscape for the economy and the country and the housing market in the next 20 years is not going to be anything like it was in the last 20 years. They just can't see it. They just can't see it. They can't see it. They are unable to get their head around the fact that the low interest rate ship of the last 20 years has sailed and isn't coming back. Now, there's so much more I want to talk about. There's so much to talk about. So I know a lot of you watch Gary Stevenson, Gary's Economics on YouTube. And the video he put out recently, I plan, I don't know if I'm going to have time. I've got so much going on. I plan to do a reaction to his video because a year ago, he said all assets were going to go through the roof, especially house prices. And they haven't. And he's acknowledged that. And in his latest video, he said, I was right about all assets, but weirdly, house prices didn't do it. And I can't remember his exact words, but he acknowledges that house prices haven't gone up at the same pace as other assets. And he's not sure why, because he's not a housing guy, right? He doesn't know the ins and outs, the details of housing. I've always disagreed with him for reasons I've gone into before. But it's interesting that he is now acknowledging the house prices aren't going up with all the other assets. So there's that. And I would like to have, because I share Gary's goal of reducing wealth inequality, but I don't agree with his proposed approach to how to achieve it. And I hope, because he's declared plans to get into politics basically and become a much bigger, grow the channel until it's so big it can influence politics. Cool. I totally support his intentions to make things better. And I don't doubt for 1 minute his prowess and experience as a trader. But I think that his outlook and his perspective is a bit myopic. He's kind of, when he looks at how to fix it, there are aspects and perspectives he doesn't have, which I think I do have because of the differences in our lives. There's some overlap, a little bit of overlap in trading in the city, but otherwise big differences. But as someone whose goal I share, which is that anyone who gets up and goes to work deserves a decent place to live and a basic decent standard of life, I agree with him. I want to see if I can change his mind on how that gets achieved. No, I don't see interest rates going back to 15% like in the video I showed yesterday. Wow, that's a good question. Mike Layson on X says, is any young professional without location security in their work essentially fucked then? You make a very good point. It's not just that, Pedal Pusher 2008. You're talking about my difference of opinion with Gary Stevenson on why house prices won't rise when other asset prices are rising. It's not just that the liquidity is poorer and slower to transact. It's that unlike other assets that you can buy and sell from your phone, houses are physical things that suffer from wear and tear and depreciation and maintenance costs and taxes and all kinds of other things that other assets don't. They're much, much riskier assets. They're much harder to get your money out of. So the very rich, the kind of people who can just switch millions between asset classes, aren't going to do it on residential property. They might buy a big commercial block. They might buy a big brand new build block of flats that's built to rent. That perhaps, but they're going to get that. They're not going. That's not going to cause house prices to go up. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. I'm going to knock it on the head for tonight because I've got a really bad throat and I'm feeling rubbish and I'm hoping to feel better for tomorrow. So every Wednesday night, guys, Wednesday night, 8:00 is the weekly movers workshop. And that's when I really go into my Q&A. So tomorrow night, Q&A for movers. If you're moving, I've had loads and loads of questions over the holiday period across all the platforms. I'm so sorry I haven't been able to get to answer them. Welcome to all my new followers. Thank you very much. I hope you find it useful. This t-shirt was a present from my mother from Christmas. Thank you very much. This is what she wanted to give me after watching my videos. We'll get into leasehold. This leasehold's just the massive risk about leasehold properties, on top of the existing risks that there have always been about leasehold properties, is that there are struggling freeholders who are price gouging. And at the moment, the law doesn't stop them from doing that. And whether or not Labour are going to change the law on that remains to be seen. I'd like to finish with just one last comment, right? My stated goal, let me me just get this back here. My stated goal of my career, this channel, Best Agent, which is my, there we are, my property website, Best Agent, which is the tool I'm hoping to deploy to help make this happen. My stated goal is a home for everyone. And now I forgot what I was going to say. What was I going to say? That's right. It was about the buying versus renting thing. For everyone to have a home, homes need to become more affordable. And I've made 3 years ago now, nearly, yeah. So we're now in 2025. In 2022, I said that my expectations were that house prices would fall. They would slide from peak to trough, 35% nominal over however long it takes. And I've always said over however long it takes. And people ask me how long I thought it would take. Initially, I said 2 years. Then I said 3 years. We're not quite at the 3-year mark yet. The 3-year mark will be autumn this year. But I've always said as long as it takes. It is happening more slowly than I thought. Prices are sliding despite what you read about average transaction values from the mortgage lenders. And I will, in other videos, go into that with Alex Crownwater, Housing Stig, and explain why. But at the top end of the market, what Rightmove calls top of the ladder, house prices have already come down more than 20% in many places in the country. And two or 3 years ago, nobody saw that coming. And I'm really grateful now to start getting stories from people about how they listened and they got out and they're glad that they did. And there are still, to this day now, more and more and more properties at the top of the ladder section of the market, sitting there, reducing their price, not selling. And the more I do these videos and the more I do this channel, the more bewildered I am at what's going on inside the heads of sellers who watch this channel and who say they hear what I'm saying and they're being realistic, but still have to change agents twice or drop their prices twice. I want to understand why they thought they'd listened to my advice, but yet they've still gone out and overpriced that badly. And I think that it's down to the gaslighting. Because one of the other effects of gaslighting is that most estate agents innocently believe what they read in the papers because they're not economists, right? And advise clients accordingly. I was at an estate agency annual conference in December. And there are a handful of them every year. And this was one of the ones I'd never been to before. It was the first time I've been to this particular one. And every year they have an economist stand on stage and give his spiel about what he expects to happen in the coming year. And I sat there and listened to him in disbelief. And nobody in the room questioned him on some of the inconsistencies within his projections, like things that just didn't make sense. So like, you can't think that and think that. That just doesn't make sense. And so I put my hand up and asked the question. I don't know, there's like 500 people or something in the room. Pointing out one of these discrepancies in his projection. And he just brushed it off. Oh, never mind about that. Never mind about that. We all just say these things. So when you've got 500 estate agency business owners in a room at an event that they've paid to be, and part of the reason they've paid to be there is to listen to this economist and to take his advice on what's happening. And then the advice, the quality of advice that comes out of the economist is absolute gutter basement advice quality. Just ignoring differences of opinion, just looking at the basic quality and does his argument stack up? Is he actually objective and impartial? It's no wonder so many agents who just want to do a good job helping their clients sell their homes are so confused about why some of their properties just aren't selling. Because they take this professional economist's advice to heart in good faith. And I'm still contemplating how I go about debunking the layers of bullshit that came out of his mouth. He was basically just a foamingly extreme, politically viewed, politically biased guy with an extreme political bias that was just dripping out of his mouth. I couldn't believe that no one picked up on it. And all of his predictions were just completely, infected with his political bias. It was weird. Very, very weird. Oh, guys, there's so many comments here. I wish I have a chance to talk through them with you. I'm going to call it. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. See you here. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Good night.